right, I'm jumping into this project after I already started sanding the top of this desk. I'm using a finishing sander and I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. The key is slow and steady, go in the direction of the wood grain. The nice thing about this finishing sander, it does have holes so it can basically suck up all the dust into the little bag. Here I switched to 20 grit. Those are the two main ones I use to get a nice finish on this top. You don't want to sand too far into it because sometimes these are just a thin veneer. All right, this is the before photo here in my studio. You can see it's got these little decorative scrolls along the feet, but most of them they were missing. So I then went in there with a putty knife and a little hammer just to kind of knock out the old wood. There are about 3 nails for each piece. So usually I'm running into the nail and the glue's kind of worn off, but there were some stubborn areas. Obviously we're gonna have to patch any of the holes that we have, but just slow and steady. There were, I guess we have 8 corners that I had to work on. So just had to get through it, right? There may be other ways that you can knock that out. Here I'm using a nice heavy duty needle nose plier to pull out the nails, but that's not always efficient too, and you probably should be using safety glasses if you're going to go that route. After a while I figured it was going to be better for me just to use a nail set and drive the nails back into the wood than try to pull the nails out. I have a little bit of a wood carving, almost chisel. I felt that was giving me a better grip on some of the wood. So between the putty knife and the chisel, I was able to get most of the wood up. And here's kind of a finished, you can see the mess of all the pieces laying there. Of course, I'm scratching it, but I'm going to patch and then I'm also going to sand. Here's all the tools that I used. I even have a little snip there. And I want to feature some veneer edging. You can get a roll of this, and I've been using this for probably a couple years now and still got plenty of it to go. I'm using, it's a white birch 3/4 inch by 25 feet, so there's tons of veneer here. I use this a lot for patching small areas where veneer is missing. Typically for this, you can just use an iron. I used a heat gun to heat up the wood, and then I just snipped it off right at the corner. You'll also notice in this view that the corners have some gaps. I'm gonna need to patch that too when I do all my wood filler. I'm just using a wood filler here. If you want to try something like Dixie Belle's Mud, you can, but I like a really good wood filler when I'm using a little bit more heavy duty purpose. And I'm not trying to be super refined here because I'm going to sand a lot of this off, but removing any excess is a good idea. But you have to do this on all the places that you patch. So my number one goal is to fill the holes or any large gaps where glue may have removed wood, and patch a little bit of the sand or these scrapes. I'm using my finger just to drive some of the wood putty into the corners. Over time, things get humid, they stretch or bend. So just patch any areas that you need to. Put this thing on fast forward. There's the veneer section. I patched that up as well. The goal is when it's all said and done, you don't have any evidence that there was something there. Next step, remove all the old hardware. My goal is to purchase new hardware. I usually keep all my hardware around. You never know when you're going to need it. So just demonstrating that process. I like my screwdriver. This is just a drawer showing you all the different clamps I have. I'm going to need them. I was looking at them as a solution for gluing this veneer down. You'll see the top, the glue had come loose. So I'm using my putty knife to slide wood glue underneath the veneer so that I can then secure that back on top of the desk. And just going around the desk anywhere that veneer is up. I had some other areas on the bottom that I had to fix as well like this, but I found that painter's tape is probably the best thing to do. Just pull that tight because clamps really couldn't get that edge the way I wanted it to. And this is probably good because clamps can also leave dents in your veneer. So a nice tape like this would work. Masking tape could probably do as well. And you just want to get a nice, firm, solid grip. It doesn't take long for that glue to set. Just make sure you give it time. Now notice that glue is seeping out. I didn't want to wipe the glue off with a wet rag because then it would be difficult for the tape to stick to wet wood. So in this case, I'll come back later on and I'll demonstrate sanding off that glue. So here, maybe 15 minutes later on, I pulled that tape off. And now I've got to get rid of all that glue residue. And I'm just using a folded piece of sandpaper to get rid of that. And just a few minutes of work. Now I'm using a sander that has an attachment to an external vacuum cleaner, shop vac. And I'm just being very gentle. I don't want to sand all the putty off, but if you do this right with a nice light sandpaper, anything that you have left is gaps that needed to be filled. You don't want to have a lot of clumpy, and I'm just using my hand to wipe it off and also feel for make sure it's all smooth. You can sand by hand, you can sand with paper, any of those would work. Next thing I did was use some painter's tape to tape off the top of the desk so it didn't get any paint on it while I paint. I like to do paint first, top coat the base, and then come back and do the top. That way when I'm staining, I could easily wipe off any excess stain because the base will be top coated. So again, this is just me trying to keep the paint off the wood. If you want to cover the wood with a towel or something else, that might be a good idea too, just to keep all of the paint off the wood. Of course, now at this point, I'm going to clean it with white lightning. Make sure you follow the directions on that container, give it a good clean, and then come back and rinse it off with water as well. That's always a great process to take. And then I love Dixie Belle's Gray Boss. It just gives me a nice neutral base and also helps protect it from any bleed through and any staining that might come through my project. Usually when I clean my project, if it's really dirty water, 2 good coats are best. And here it is, all bossed and ready to go. At this point, I usually start figuring out what I'm going to do next. I decided to go with Yankee blue, just a really beautiful mid-tone blue, with the idea that I'm going to enhance it with Voodoo Gel Stain, and I'll demonstrate that here in a few minutes. So all done. I did not do 2 coats of Yankee blue. I just did 1. I wanted to have it a little bit of a rugged, kind of casual, loosely painted finish. Now I'm jumping in there with Voodoo Gel Stain. This is Temptress. It's a beautiful teal color, and it's going to be treated almost like a wash. And you'll see here I'm painting it quickly. I do like to mist my surface when I'm using a Voodoo Gel Stain. If not, it'll dry quickly and you really can't move it around. The next thing I'm going to do is mist it, and then I'm going to start dabbing and wiping off any excess that I would like, because I want to create this lovely, dark, moody, but I love how the Temptress is going into the crevices, and a lot of those will just dry. It typically dries a little darker than you might see on camera or in person, so you might do a test sample or a side, like for example, just do the right side, let it dry and see if you like it. If it's not really where you want to be, put another coat of paint on there and give it another try. Here I'm demonstrating and talking about complement colors. Complement is opposite on the color wheel. So we're working on the blues. The complement would be something in the reds. So right now I am going to use a different Voodoo Gel Stain, which is more of Tobacco Road, again, a warm color. And I'm going to do what I like to describe as shading. And I'm just adding some tones to it to give it, again, more depth, more aged or antique look. And just using one of Dixie Belle's craft brushes. Really love those brushes. They're very versatile. You should get a set of those to have around. And you can see here how I'm just really dabbing it in there. And I'm going to use a brush like a Belle brush or anything that's soft. And I like to blend it, so I'm not leaving it rough. You can see how I'm putting it in certain areas that feels like it's a shadowy, dark, or maybe dirty. If you want to make it look like over time it just hasn't been cleaned. Again, we go with an antique finish. For variety, I decided I would use Dixie Belle's patina paint. This is copper as a faux distressing accent on the details of the project. I'm not putting it everywhere, just select locations, random, just to keep it almost spontaneous. And I love the copper because it pops. You can try moonshine metallics as an option. If you want, you can come back with gilding wax. There's copper gilding wax. So again, just for variety and trying something different, I used the copper patina paint. And this is it all finished painted. The next step after that would be to top coat it. After top coating is done, now I'm coming in with no paint gel stain. This is espresso, one of the top, my favorite no paint gel stain colors. I'm using one of the soft cloth pads and gloves. I am indoors. So I've got usually I'll run a fan just to help it kind of air out, but nothing crazy that's I can't do it in my house. I am in my studio, which works really well, but look how beautiful that is. This is one coat, and I'm taking the gloves off. Then after while that's working, I head off to Hobby Lobby to get me some new knobs. I'm looking for something that I can paint, and there they are. I bought, I believe, 8 of them to be painted to match the desk. I'm going to go through my same colors, Yankee blue. Then I'm going to do, I definitely wanted the copper to pop, so I brought in the copper. How cool is that? And then once all that dries really well, I'll come back and top coat that just like I did the desk. And I love the satin. Here I'm doing basically my final prep where it's just cleaning out the drawers and getting everything to slide. I love Big Mama's butter. I usually use unscented. Full of how the butter can really bring that natural wood to life. On the left is untreated, on the right is treated, and it looks so great. That finishes it all up beautifully and makes this desk look fresh and ready to go for the next customer. All right, that's it for this episode. Hope that you enjoyed that walkthrough of all the prep that went into this desk project. Don't forget to check out my website, bowtietreasures.com, and follow me on social media at bowtietreasures. Always happy to help. Let me know if you have any questions. And until next time, this is Aaron at the Bowtie Treasure Studio. Y'all take care.